Tutankhamun's golden mask has been examined for a full century. Every centimeter of it seemed measured, documented, and thoroughly explained. Then a team with no particular interest in ancient Egypt pointed laboratory equipment designed for jewelers and forensic specialists directly at that same gold. Tools that had no business being anywhere near a pharaoh's resting place. No one thought the metal had anything left to conceal. It did. The face. The entire world knows the story. Howard Carter uncovered the entrance to Tutankhamun's tomb in the Valley of the Kings on the 4th of November, 1922, funded by the wealthy English collector Lord Carnarvon. 3 additional years of painstaking excavation through chamber after chamber were needed before Carter's team finally reached the mummy itself. On the 28th of October, 1925, they raised the lid from the innermost of 3 nested coffins and laid eyes on the gold mask for the first time in roughly 3,250 years. Carter described the face as serene and beautiful, bearing the same features seen on the king's statues scattered throughout the tomb. The mask stands around 54 centimeters tall, just over 21 inches, and weighs more than 10 kilograms, approximately 22 pounds, crafted almost entirely from gold. Its eyes are formed from obsidian and quartz. The eyebrows and eyelids are inlaid with lapis lazuli, and a broad collar across the chest holds carnelian turquoise-colored glass and various semi-precious stones. A cobra and a vulture rise from the forehead, representing Lower and Upper Egypt united beneath a single ruler. 2 months after its discovery, the mask completed the 400-mile journey to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it remained on display for nearly a full century, before eventually moving to the new Grand Egyptian Museum in Giza after that facility officially opened in November of 2025. The new exhibition allows visitors to walk entirely around the mask for the very first time, revealing the protective spell carved across its back and shoulders, a perspective the old Cairo Museum never permitted since the mask had rested with its back pressed against a wall for almost 100 years. For the majority of that time, the mask was regarded as a closed chapter of history, admired but rarely interrogated. That certainty began to unravel the moment scientists finally directed proper testing equipment at the gold itself, the test that wasn't searching for a mystery. In 2014, a group of Japanese researchers, including Uda, A. Ishizaki, and Nimbaba, was granted rare permission to examine the mask using a portable device engineered to analyze the chemical composition of metal without cutting into it or removing so much as a single fragment. Their instruments combined 2 techniques: X-ray fluorescence and X-ray diffraction, both of which direct a beam onto a tiny spot on the surface, roughly 2 millimeters wide, and then read what reflects back to identify precisely which elements and structures are present. The entire examination took place in open air without causing any harm to the mask whatsoever. The goal was straightforward. The researchers wanted to catalog the materials composing the mask and the matching golden throne recovered from the same tomb, confirming which colored stones and glass had been used and establishing how pure the gold actually was. No one involved anticipated that the results would challenge what historians had long believed about the object. The study was published that same year in a volume honoring Japanese Egyptologist Sakuji Yoshimura, intended as a reliable reference for future researchers rather than a headline-grabbing revelation. The figures that came back from the face of the mask told an entirely different story from the rest of it, the layer concealed beneath the surface. The scan confirmed that the gold sheets forming most of the mask measure 23 carats, an exceptionally high purity level consistent with Royal Egyptian metalwork. Yet the surface of the face itself carried something additional. Resting on top of that 23-carat gold was a distinct coating, a layer of 18-carat white gold, only about 28 nanometers thick, thinner than the average soap bubble and completely undetectable without instruments capable of resolving structures at that scale. That second layer had been sitting on Tutankhamun's face for roughly 3,300 years, without anyone ever noticing it, hidden within gold that appears solid and uniform to the unaided eye. White gold takes on its pale color through the addition of metals like silver, giving the face a noticeably different tone compared to the richer yellow of the headdress and collar surrounding it. Ancient Egyptian goldsmiths clearly possessed the skill needed to apply a coating this thin and this precise. That level of craftsmanship was something modern conservators had not fully appreciated until the scan brought it to light. Before we continue, if you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please think about subscribing. It makes a real difference to the channel. Finding a hidden coating on the face immediately raised an obvious question. Why would the face alone receive treatment so different from the rest of the mask? And did that difference connect to anything beyond itself? Scientists had already begun raising questions about the mask's origins, the ears that didn't quite fit the accepted story. British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves had been looking closely at that exact question since 2001, though his theory drew widespread attention only in 2015. Reeves drew focus to the ears on the mask, each one pierced through with a hole that was clearly made to hold earrings. In royal Egyptian art from that period, pierced ears almost exclusively appeared on children and on women, never on a fully grown king depicted in his official likeness. Reeves argued that no representation of an adult male pharaoh anywhere in Egyptian art shows him wearing earrings, which made the detail difficult to explain if the mask had been created for Tutankhamun as a reigning king. Reeves connected those pierced ears to Nefertiti, a female pharaoh who held power briefly during the turbulent years following Akhenaten's death and before Tutankhamun claimed the throne as a young child. Many historians believe Nefertiti and Queen Nefertiti, Tutankhamun's stepmother, were actually the same individual, ruling under a different name. If that was the case, Reeves suggested the mask, or at least certain portions of it, may have originally been crafted for her. Zahi Hawass, a former minister of Egyptian antiquities, pushed back firmly against this interpretation. He noted that pierced ears appear across statues and depictions of 18th dynasty rulers from childhood onward, arguing that this detail alone proves nothing about the gender or intended owner of the mask. That dispute over a pair of small holes was only the opening argument. The real controversy centered on something engraved directly into the gold itself. The queen who faded from history, Nefertiti, was the principal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, who governed Egypt for roughly 17 years, beginning around 1353 BC. Akhenaten introduced one of the most destabilizing religious transformations in all of Egyptian history, shutting down the worship of the traditional gods and elevating a single sun disk known as the Aten above everything else. Nefertiti held a remarkably visible role throughout this era, appearing in temple carvings, carrying out rituals that had nearly always been reserved for the pharaoh alone, and standing alongside her husband in a capacity closer to co-ruler than conventional queen. Then, somewhere around her 12th year in the official record, Nefertiti simply vanishes from Egyptian inscriptions. Historians continue to debate what took place after that. Some believe she died during this period. Others argue she assumed a new identity as a female pharaoh under the throne name Nefertiti, ruling either alongside Akhenaten or briefly following him before Tutankhamun ascended to power as a child at roughly age 9. A third theory proposes a separate and still mysterious ruler named Smenkhkare as the one who filled that same gap. Whichever version turns out to be accurate, Akhenaten's religious revolution collapsed almost immediately following his death. The royal court abandoned his newly built capital, returned to the traditional seat of power at Thebes, and reinstated the old gods to their former prominence. Tutankhamun himself was born carrying the name Tutankhaten, which honored the sun disk his father had championed, and later renamed himself to honor Amun, the god his family labored to restore. Because so few reliable records survived from these years, historians have considerably less to work with here than for almost any other period of Egyptian royal history. That gap in the written record is precisely why researchers examined the inscriptions on the mask with such focus, hoping the metal itself might have preserved what the official written accounts did not. Beneath the surface, another name waited. Reeves turned his attention to the cartouche, the oval enclosure Egyptians traditionally used to frame a royal name, pressed into the straps running down either side of the mask's shoulders. He noted that the surface surrounding Tutankhamun's name appeared noticeably worn and reworked when compared to the sharp, clean engraving visible elsewhere across the mask. Peering at the faint scratch marks lying underneath that surface, Reeves concluded that the underlying outline matched an entirely different name altogether. That name read Ankakeperure Nefertiti, the same throne name connected to the female pharaoh widely believed to have been Nefertiti herself. Reeves presented this argument in a paper titled Tutankhamun's Mask Reconsidered, building it upon years of research into objects found throughout the tomb that appeared to have been repurposed from an earlier royal owner. His central theory holds that when Tutankhamun died suddenly and unexpectedly at around 18 or 19 years of age, his officials had no properly prepared tomb or funerary equipment waiting for him. Faced with that pressure, workers reached for whatever royal items were already available. Among them, a mask crafted years earlier for someone else entirely, and adjusted both the name and the face to suit their young king. That explanation only holds together if the physical evidence supports it, and researchers found more of it buried within the gold alloy itself. 2 different golds, 1 single face. Separate testing carried out on the mask revealed that the gold composing the face registers at roughly 23.2 carats, while the gold covering the rest of the headdress and collar measures closer to 23.5 carats. The gap is small, yet consistent enough that Reeves argued the face had been manufactured as its own distinct piece of metal, later added onto an already existing headdress, rather than cast together with the rest of the piece in a single continuous process. That claim aligns directly with what the 2014 scan had already suggested. A face carrying its own marginally different gold composition, then coated in a paper-thin layer of pale white gold that went unnoticed through 90 years of public display, points strongly toward a face that was swapped in rather than original to the object. Reeves argued that the Neem's headdress, the collar, and the ears were crafted first for Nefertiti, while the face visible today was added on afterward, replacing whatever face had originally been there. None of this settled the debate conclusively, but it handed both skeptics and supporters physical details worth putting to further tests. That closer examination arrived sooner than anyone had anticipated, brought on by an accident nobody could have predicted. In August of 2014, workers at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo accidentally knocked the mask's long braided beard free while carrying out lighting repairs around its display case. Rather than reporting the damage through the proper official channels, staff members quietly reattached the beard using industrial epoxy glue, leaving behind a thick, clearly visible crust at the join where the beard met the chin. The botched repair remained hidden from public knowledge until January of 2015, when the damage was finally disclosed and confirmed by Egypt's Antiquities Ministry. Officials brought in German conservator Christian Ekman, a specialist in ancient glass and metal restoration, to address the damage correctly. Beginning in October of 2015, Ekman led a joint German and Egyptian team through a 9-week restoration process that removed the beard, scraped away the hardened epoxy, and reattached it using beeswax, a material far closer to what ancient Egyptian goldsmiths would have originally employed. As part of that restoration work, the team carried out a full 3-dimensional scan of the mask, marking the first detailed technical study of its construction methods ever performed. That research uncovered that the beard had actually come loose on a previous occasion sometime following the tomb's discovery, and had not been properly secured again until 1946. 8 museum employees, including a former director, were subsequently fined and disciplined in connection with the incident. The scandal drew significant international embarrassment toward Egypt's antiquities sector, yet it also produced the most thorough physical examination the mask had undergone since the day it left the tomb. Even with all that fresh data now available, not every expert agreed that the evidence pointed toward Nefertiti. Egyptian scholars and researchers have consistently pushed back against the notion that the mask was ever made for anyone other than Tutankhamun himself. Zahi Hawass has stated outright that pierced ears carry no real weight as evidence on their own, since they show up across depictions of young 18th dynasty royals, regardless of whether the subject was male or female. Saba Abdel Razi, who once served as a director at the Egyptian Museum, pointed to the protective spell carved across the back and shoulders of the mask, arguing that its language repeatedly connects back to the names and titles associated with Tutankhamun, which she said directly undermines any suggestion that the piece was originally crafted for someone else. It has also been noted that during the 2015 restoration, the German-led team specifically searched for any trace of Nefertiti's name on the mask and came away with nothing. Reeves's wider theory, that Nefertiti's undiscovered tomb lies behind a concealed wall within Tutankhamun's own burial chamber, met with equally strong resistance. Radar scans carried out by a Japanese specialist in 2016 hinted at hollow areas behind the tomb's northern wall, but a follow-up study conducted by an Italian team from the Polytechnic University of Turin turned up no evidence backing that interpretation. A thorough academic review published in 2021, covering every radar survey and argument on the matter, concluded that the combined evidence came down firmly against the existence of a hidden Nefertiti burial, even while acknowledging that certain objects within the tomb had clearly been repurposed from an earlier owner. What survived every round of that ongoing argument was the medal itself, sitting exactly where the 2014 scan had located it, unchanged and unmoved, regardless of which side of the debate a person happened to fall on. Strip away all the competing theories and one fact remains unshaken. A team using equipment designed for chemical analysis rather than archaeology discovered a coating of 18-karat white gold, just 28 nanometers thick, resting on Tutankhamun's face, concealed within metal that millions of people had gazed at directly across many generations. That measurement is not subject to debate the way the Nefertiti theory is. It happened, and nobody recorded it until modern scanning technology finally brought it to light. Whether that hidden layer, the pierced ears and the worn cartouche together point to an identity borrowed from a forgotten queen, or simply reflect the hasty, resourceful craftsmanship of ancient goldsmiths, remains one of the liveliest open questions in Egyptology today. The mask now stands inside the Grand Egyptian Museum in Giza, a sprawling institution covering around 500,000 square meters that finally brings together more than 5,000 objects from Tutankhamun's tomb under a single roof. A setting that Howard Carter's own team could never have pictured while standing inside that sealed chamber back in 1922. Scientists are still working to fully understand a face that the world believed it had already known for a very long time.